Ladies and gentlemen.
CHESSMAN Dan, new haircut, food bliss. Playing chess every day until we get good at chess. We're continuing our series on Road to 1500 ELO. We're sitting at 1127. As for the thumbnail of the video, what is the best opening for beginners? The Vienna. You should play the Vienna, and here's why. I'll be recapping my last game I just played at the time of recording this about 30 minutes ago while I was drinking coffee at Starbucks. So this is how good, the Vienna is so good, you could win while eating a cheese sandwich. So what is the Vienna? For anyone new to the channel or just never doesn't know what the Vienna is, starts off with e4. The Vienna can only be played against response e5. e5 followed by knight c3. This is the Vienna game. Keep in mind that whenever you go on YouTube or any sort of online platform where you want to learn an opening, usually they show you the main line. The variation in which I played is not the main line. I did play a lot of the book moves. There's a concept in chess, whenever you learn an opening, over time, the more reps you get with that opening, the more variations you will face, in which you would have to analyze your games, learn, slowly add layers to your repertoire. It's one of those games. The Vienna game. Here, my opponent, e6. d6 is a book move. I personally don't think this is the best way to play against the Vienna because it does block your dark squared bishop. d6 is often encountered whenever you face games like let's say you are able to play the Vienna gambit, right? The whole idea with the Vienna, of course, is a great opening, but you ideally would like to get the Vienna gambit. Now, the opponent could accept the gambit or they could decline it. And one way of declining, which is pretty popular at lower levels, is d6. Now, this is not the best way to decline the Vienna gambit, but this is a way. With that being said, that's not the position we got. However, when facing d6, and both variations, right, whenever facing d6, I didn't take too much time because I've played enough Vienna games that I kind of knew the book moves. Is you're pushing your pawn to f4. The whole idea with f4 is that you're kind of switching this up to a king's gambit style. There's I don't know if this would fall under the category of transposing your opening to another opening. However, it's really important whenever you're learning how to play chess and you find an opening you like to stick with it. Why? Because the more repetitions you get, the more positions you will play. In other words, this position I've played plenty of times. Doesn't mean I won every time. However, by repetition and studying, I'm able to know what the best moves are. My opponent develops his knight, so I develop my knight. Here, my opponent decides to pin my knight to the queen. I could have played multitude moves. I decided to push this bishop out. The reason being is anytime you get pinned by a bishop, the question is, hey, what are you doing, bishop? You decide to move back, and I decide to move with the bishop. So you will see this if you decide to play the Vienna. You will encounter an ungodly amount of knight pins. And that variation is always good to remember these moves with the pawns. It does two things. A, you could potentially trap a piece like a bishop or a knight. And two, even if they're able to escape with their bishop, you are creating so much space on the king side. The general ideas for the Vienna, right, is you're attacking this f7 pawn, right? Why is f7 pawn super weak? Because it's only defended by the king. I'm going to see here, though, that despite you having middle games, you must always meet the demand of the position. Regardless, my opponent goes here, and I now trap the bishop. Pretty nice. I'm up 3.4 material. He takes the pawn, and I take back. Now, if you notice, taking with the g-pawn is best. Whenever you are dealing with a dilemma or options of which pawn should I take, a general rule in chess is you should always take towards the center, never take away from the center. If I would have taken, I don't think it would have been bad, but now I'm giving up the center to my opponent. And why would I do that? Here my opponent develops his knight. I now pin. Just because, your opponent's pin wasn't accurate doesn't mean yours isn't. This is just a stronger pin. Why? Because literally the knight can't move because you'll be in check. Here he unpins himself, so I take. We just trade off equal pieces. I didn't mind trading pieces at this point because I'm already up a bishop. I'm actually a knight. I'm up a knight. And as I continue to develop, if I could continue to start trading off pieces, I will. Here I decided to protect this pawn. I'm just further The computer says it's a good move because I'm developing my center pawn, but my main idea is develop my bishop and prepare to castle queenside. My opponent castles kingside, is queenside, which is the best move. I now decide to develop my dark squared bishop. There was something better. What was the best move? I guess develop my queen for the middle game. I just figured, hey, bishop. Here he does the same thing, connecting his rooks. I now develop, put my queen up to d2. The idea is preparing a castle and get my rooks connected. The best move for me is to move my queen to e2. It's just more flexibility, and in the future I will try to remember that. Regardless, here my opponent decides to, develop his knight. I've been trying to get better at, despite of me just having a game plan respond to what my opponent could do. I quickly saw that when my opponent moved his knight, what squares could he go to? He can't go here because he'll get taken. I mean, it would have been an even exchange. Or he could have gone here. So I decided I'm going to move my rook. I'm moving my rook to a semi-open file. Has more control. Look how strong in one move by activating your rook. Look how much vision my opponent I have. Listen right here. It also prevents my opponent from storming in with his knight. Here, he decides to push his pawn, trying to break my pawn structure. I decide to take, and then he took. I don't know if this was the best way he could have done it, but my opponent didn't have too much moves. He's trying to get his rooks in the game. However, I just felt like I had more control. And after I castled, my opponent decides to attack my hanging knight. So what should I do? I decide to protect it. Sometimes you don't gotta overthink things, right? In terms of, should I move my piece, right? I thought initially about moving my knight to g5. However, it's like, what's the best move? Does this improve my position? By me moving it, yes, I'm getting it out of danger and I'm potentially trading off pieces, but now I give my opponent the f file, and I don't want to give him that. So the simplest move is activate your rook, defend your knight. Technical difficulties. We're back. Controlling that file. So if you could activate your piece and improve your position, do it. Here, my opponent decides to block off, block the vision of my rook, as well as just get his bishop in a more active square. I decide to offer a bishop exchange. He takes, and now my opponent decides to move his knight out the way. He did not want to deal with a rook exchange. I decided to push my pawn. At this point, I figured, what is my opponent trying to attack? And I decided I wanted to do another pawn break. Oftentimes in chess, once you're fully developed, if you're able to form an accurate pawn break, you're most likely going to capitalize on a winning position. So here, my opponent decides to attack my knight. And then the only bad move I played in this game. Keep in mind, I have one blunder in this game. And only one inaccuracy. Everything else, flawless. Was pawn takes. Why was this? What was my mindset behind it, right? Whenever you decide to analyze your games and you form inaccuracies, misses, blunders, etc., you must ask yourself, why did I do that? And what's the best move? The reason why I took is that I calculated, okay, I'm going to take this pawn, it's going to take, and I'm able to take this rook. And this rook is defended by the queen. So I would be up a pawn in this exchange. But what I failed to calculate, which I immediately spotted upon taking that move, is that this variation would have worked. However, this pawn could take my rook, so I would have blundered the rook. Right, so I blundered. Keep in mind, this whole game, I'm up 3.3 points of material. This doesn't lose the game, however, it just equalizes the position. And this is, you're gonna see, this turns out to be a pretty long game, and you do not want to be you don't want to lose a winning advantage. However, luckily, my opponent did not see that exchange. I saw it immediately. I'm like, oh my gosh, I messed up. Luckily, I was safe and decided to move my knight in safety. This is something I need to really square away as I approach 1200 if I want to get past the early and intermediate stage and want to improve to become an actual good player. These blunders can't happen. This was a miscalculation. Granted, I was playing casually in terms of I was in my location, but nonetheless, a blunder is a blunder. I must own up to it. My opponent decides to take the pawn. I now take another free pawn. And now I'm offering a rook exchange. So here, what's happening? There's multiple things happening. Right? The moment my opponent moves his knight, he's attacking my rook. I can defend my rook. But what's the concept in chess? You do not have to respond to danger if you could offer your opponent an equal or greater danger to them. I don't know if I said that right, but and what does this do? I win a pawn, so I took my pawn back, and now I'm threatening this knight. And what else? Now I'm threatening rook exchange. The opponent decides to move, now his pawn is lost. At this point, I had to think very clearly. I was like, okay, my knight's hanging. This knight is defending, or it's attacking my rook. What about this? So I was like, okay, what can I do? I was like, let's simplify the board. I'm up 2 points of material. I don't want to deal with this hanging knight just yet. Let's give a rook. Let's check and offer rook exchange. So the moment he takes, now I think I'm like, okay, my rook's still hanging, and if I don't play my cards right, I could potentially lose a knight, and I've given up an open file with direct access to my king. I decide to take this pawn. In this variation, I do two things. The most immediate, I take a pawn, and B, if my opponent decides to take this knight, which I hope he did, I am threatening mate. His only move is to go here, and then that's checkmate. Right? Because this knight is covering the square. And at the very least, too, I win a pawn. Instead, my opponent decides to double his rook and his queen. Now, pretty good move. At this point, I was like, okay, should I deal with this knight? Or should I just get rid of my knight because I'm already up material? I decided to do instead get a free pawn. Why? Okay, taking this pawn, I'm still winning, and we're still going to do a queen exchange, a knight exchange. This kind of enforces a knight exchange from my opponent because two things are going to happen. Either A, he's going to move it out the way, which would be a really dumb move because he'll just blunder a knight, or we do a rook exchange, or knight exchange, excuse me, and that's what happens. At this point, I'm up 4.9 points of material, winning endgame. My next goal, as I'm thinking, is like I need to get the queens off the board because I don't want to deal with the queens. That's just me personally. And I need to activate my king. Quickly, my opponent decides to get out of check. The awesome thing about taking this knight, failed to mention, check. I now offer a queen exchange. There's a tactic. I'm not going to open the tactic because I probably won't be able to notice. I just wanted to win a queen. Now the queens are off the board. I'm still up. Now I'm up 5 points of advantage. The whole point of this middle game now is I need to quickly activate my knight, or queen, excuse me. And if I get these rooks off the board, I'm winning. So we start pushing. He takes. I decide to check. My opponent moves. I take another free pawn. So while I'm trying to improve my position, I need to take all his pawns. Here, my opponent checks, move out the way, and now my opponent's trying to chip me away. Keep in mind, there's a quick, very easy way to blunder my position, and that's by losing my pawns. The most easiest way to protect this pawn is to defend it with this pawn. My opponent goes here. The whole idea is he wants this pawn. Now, in the end game, Malini Weenie, if you so happen to watch this part of the video, an active king could be so strong. What's the best way to protect all these pawns? Move your knight. I guess the best move would have been here. Oh, I mean, yeah, I thought about doing that too. Just offer a check. However, I was just like, okay, I really need to get my king active. I felt like this was a more natural move for my level. Now my opponent moves out, and now I'm pushing my pawns. Doing so does capture my hanging pawn, so that probably wasn't the best move. I'm activating. My opponent activates his king, which also threatens my hanging knight. I quickly move out the way with a check. My opponent steps away. I now check again. And at this point, I'm just winning this endgame. As long as I could get a push pawn, I could get a pass pawn and get these rooks off the board, I feel like I have a good position. Here, we just checks, we're moving. The whole idea with this check too is I'm taking his pawn, so now my opponent has one pawn left and is a pawn on the A file. The likelihood of him able to promote this pawn is super low. I got two pawns, both on the B and C file. My opponent decides to threaten my pawn. I move it forward naturally. Here, my opponent pushes his pawn. I was like, there's no reason why he would take, because I would actually take with this pawn instead. I decide to move my rook. The whole idea with this rook is I am threatening to A, take his pawn, and B, get the rooks off the board. Also, if he decided to push, I can't take with either or. I would have taken with this because he would have been forced to take or leave. If he would have taken a crushing position, I'm just winning. Mate at 19, right? Instead, my opponent decides. Instead to move his rook out the way. Probably a better move for my opponent because he's such down material. He can't afford to get the rooks off the board. He'll just lose. And now I take and my opponent resigns. In this game, this was a 45 move game. Aside from that one blunder and I had one inaccuracy, I feel very proud about this game because this is showing that this is like a good game for me in the sense of showing I'm making progress. For the most part, I was able to respond to what my opponent wants, make improving moves, and my opponent played pretty well. According to chess.com, he played a 1700 game rating. I played an 1800 game rating. He had an 82% accuracy. I had an 87% accuracy. Obviously in chess.com, you don't want to get stuck on your game rating. However, this shows that I'm improving. Not all games are going to be like this. If you stuck around to the end, check out the Vienna. Check out Gotham Chess League course. This is non-sponsored. It helped me. So it helped you too.